I've started a new channel called Lunila Tales. Please subscribe and watch my best stories there. Link is in the description. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. A lion roared through holographic speakers. A shark snapped in slow motion across 12-dimensional projections, and the universe's most intelligent beings collapsed in laughter. They weren't laughing at the lion's majesty or the shark's ferocity. They were laughing at Earth. The Great Predator Showcase was meant to celebrate nature's most efficient killers, and every planet sent its champions. The insectoid Vocarians showcased their glass mantises, which sliced meteorites in half. The Draxons presented their lava serpents, living infernos that devoured plasma. The Earth delegation, however, proudly unveiled lions, tigers, and eagles. To the aliens, they looked like cuddly museum exhibits. The laughter came in waves, echoing through the orbiting amphitheater, a ring of light and arrogance circling a blue dwarf star. In the center stood Commander Aisha Patel, Earth's ambassador, trying not to flinch as an amphibious dignitary with 8 tongues choked out between guffaws. Are these your apex predators? They have hair. The crowd erupted again. Even the translation drones wheezed with synthesized chuckles. Aisha's diplomatic smile twitched. Inside, her pride burned. Behind her, Dr. Max Rivera, biologist and evolutionary strategist, whispered, "I told you we should have brought mosquitoes. They kill more humans than lions ever will." She glared at him. Not helping. A creature shaped like a floating diamond hovered closer to the stage. It was the arbiter of beasts, the host of the event, its voice pulsing through every mind in the chamber. "Planet Earth," it intoned, "you have presented your finest hunters. They are visually entertaining, but primitive, inefficient." Its words resonated like mock applause. "Tell us, how have your species survived with such soft guardians?" Aisha clenched her jaw. "Because we adapt. We evolve. We use intelligence where brute force fails." The arbiter's light flickered like laughter. "Ah yes, the toolmakers. So fragile, you built machines to do your biting." The audience exploded again. For a moment Aisha considered walking off stage, but Max muttered, "You know what? Let them laugh." She shot him a look. "You enjoying this?" He grinned. "No, I just realized something. They've seen our lions, sharks, and wolves, but not everything." She frowned. "Meaning?" He leaned in, eyes gleaming. "We've got something nastier than all of them combined, and it's the size of a house cat." Hours later, in the privacy of their orbiting vessel, Max rummaged through his digital archives, muttering like a man on the verge of scientific rebellion. He pulled up an old file labeled Project Malivera. The hologram blinked alive, showing grainy footage. A small, stocky creature tearing into a snake, shrugging off venom, and then charging a leopard. The animal's eyes glowed with raw, unfiltered audacity. "Meet the honey badger," Max said, smiling as the creature survived being bitten, stung, and slammed against rocks, only to crawl back up and bite harder. "Nature's middle finger." Aisha raised an eyebrow. "You're suggesting we present that?" "I'm suggesting," Max replied, "we show the galaxy what happens when survival stops caring about logic." She replayed the clip. The badger fought like it had a vendetta against existence itself. It tore into a beehive, ignoring hundreds of stings. It wrestled a python, bit through its skull, and dragged the corpse into its burrow for a nap. "It's insane," Aisha whispered. "Exactly," Max said. "It doesn't care about size, pain, or reason. It just keeps going." Imagine that attitude unleashed on the galaxy. Aisha sat in silence. The laughter from earlier still echoed in her mind. The image of sneering aliens burned her patience away. Maybe Earth didn't need to prove intelligence. Maybe it needed to remind the universe that madness was also a form of evolution. "All right," she said finally. "We'll give them a show they'll never forget." Back on the viewing deck, the stars stretched like silver fire across the void. Earth's holographic predators had already become an interstellar meme. The Galactic News Sphere replayed footage of the lion roaring while captions read, "Adorable primitive Earth beast tries to assert dominance." The mockery spread faster than light. Max and Aisha watched in silence until she said, "You really think one animal can turn this around?" He grinned. "It's not about the animal. It's about what it represents. The honey badger doesn't care about being outmatched. It doesn't care about hierarchy or logic. It just doesn't stop." He turned toward her with that dangerous spark of human defiance. "And that's the part they'll never understand." A message pinged through the ship. The Arbiter of Beasts had invited them to return next cycle to entertain the galaxy further. Aisha smiled coldly. "Oh, we will." Max walked toward the specimen bay. "I'll need to make some calls to the Wildlife Preservation Corps. And a reinforced containment capsule." She followed, half amused, half terrified. "You're actually serious?" "Completely," he said. "If the galaxy wants a show, we'll give them the real Earth experience. The kind that bites back." That night, as their ship orbited the pale glow of the showcase arena, Aisha couldn't sleep. The humiliation replayed in her head, the sneers, the laughter, the pity. Humanity had reached the stars only to be treated as comic relief. But beneath the embarrassment was something else, a spark, an ancient instinct that refused to bow. Maybe Earth's predators weren't the biggest or the strongest, but they carried something rarer, persistence. She rose, looking out the viewport at the endless void. Somewhere down there, on that small blue planet, a honey badger was probably fighting a snake or stealing honey while bees stung its eyes. Completely unfazed. Completely unstoppable. She whispered to herself, "Let's see them laugh at that." Max's voice echoed from the corridor. "You awake?" "Barely." "Good," he said, entering with a datapad. "Because I've just filed the mission request. Operation Badger Drop." Aisha blinked. "You're naming it after a rodent?" "A carnivore," he corrected. "A fuzzy storm of vengeance. You'll see." The galaxy didn't know it yet, but laughter would soon turn to silence. And silence to fear. For now, though, the stars twinkled innocently, unaware that three small creatures from a forgotten corner of the Milky Way were about to rewrite the rules of dominance. The ship named Horizon Ark floated above Earth's atmosphere like a silent witness to human audacity. Inside, Dr. Max Rivera was pacing across the laboratory floor, muttering to himself while reviewing containment protocols that looked more like military prison plans than scientific precautions. Commander Aisha Patel stood nearby with arms crossed, watching technicians nervously handle the reinforced pod that would carry 3 honey badgers across the stars. Each capsule wall was made from titanium mesh, electromagnetic fields, and an optional tranquilizer mist system that had already failed 3 times during testing. The reason was simple. The honey badger didn't care about tranquilizers. Max rubbed his temples. "You'd think something the size of a backpack couldn't dent metal." Aisha glanced at the dented steel wall behind him. "You thought wrong." The team of scientists wore padded armor and anxiety in equal measure. Every few minutes, a growl or hiss echoed through the chamber, followed by the metallic sound of claws scraping against containment glass. "Are they supposed to sound that angry?" one assistant asked. Max sighed. "That's their neutral mood. Angry is when they stop making noise." It had taken days of chaos just to get the creatures ready for launch. The first attempt to capture them in South Africa ended with 3 trucks overturned, 2 tranquilizer drones destroyed, and 1 cameraman who swore he saw a badger climb a tree just to bite the drone operator. The team eventually used bait laced with honey and, for reasons no one could explain, a pop song played on loop that somehow distracted them long enough to sedate them. Max still had no idea why. Aisha had called the incident a preview of disaster. Now, under the fluorescent lights of the launch deck, those same badgers crouched in their cages, glaring at anyone who got too close. Their eyes were black mirrors of pure intent. Max looked down at them and muttered, "They don't look like much." Aisha replied, "Neither did we when we first left the caves." Their mission was simple on paper and absurd in reality. Deliver 3 honey badgers to the planet Gralnock, home to the galaxy's most feared predator species, the Skroth. The goal was to demonstrate Earth's resilience, maybe reclaim some dignity after the galactic humiliation. But every time Aisha thought about it, the plan sounded less like diplomacy and more like cosmic revenge. The launch countdown began. Technicians secured the pods and initiated cryostabilization. Max leaned over the control board, watching the vitals. Heart rate steady. Slight aggression spikes. That's normal. Aisha smirked. Define normal. The ship's AI, cold and monotone, announced, warning. Subject B is attempting to dismantle its enclosure. Sparks flew from one pod. Max groaned. He learned how to use his claws as tools. Fantastic. The launch sequence accelerated. Ready or not, Aisha whispered, let's ruin someone's day. The Horizon Ark's thrusters ignited, and the ship hurled toward the wormhole gate that connected Earth to the Confederation's transit network. Within minutes, stars bent and twisted into white ribbons, and Earth disappeared behind them. Aisha watched through the viewport as the blue planet shrank into a dot. We're betting the galaxy's reputation on a creature that eats venomous snakes for breakfast. Max smiled faintly. It's poetic, isn't it? We were mocked for being weak, so we sent something that doesn't even acknowledge fear. 3 days later, they reached orbit around Gralnock. The planet below shimmered with molten rivers and red forests. Its atmosphere was thick with oxygen and danger, a place where only the ruthless survive. The Skroth dominated this world, towering beasts of muscle and scales, intelligent and proud. They hunted in packs, wore armor forged from volcanic rock, and had never known defeat. Until now. The drop pods entered the atmosphere, glowing like meteors. The Galactic Confederation's cameras broadcast the event live, eager to see Earth's next comedy act. On dozens of worlds, alien viewers tuned in to watch what they expected to be another embarrassment. Commentators joked about Earth's emotional support ferrets, and placed bets on how fast the Skroth would eat them. The pods landed in the crimson sands of Gralnock's Central Valley, right in the territory of the largest Skroth tribe. Inside the control room, Aisha and Max monitored through drones. Pod 1 opened, a technician reported. A small creature stepped out, sniffed the alien air, and began digging in the dirt as if nothing around it mattered. Aisha frowned. It's ignoring everything. Max leaned forward. Wait for it. The Skroth approached, curious, towering over the honey badger. Their leader, a reptilian giant with obsidian eyes, hissed a command. The others closed in. The badger looked up slowly, yawned, and then charged. The next 30 seconds defied logic. The Skroth lunged with claws capable of slicing metal, but the badger dodged, bit deep into its leg, and refused to let go. Another Skroth swung a club the size of a car, smashing the ground. Dust filled the air. When it cleared, the honey badger was on the creature's back, tearing through scales. The drone's microphones captured a mix of alien roars and human disbelief. Aisha whispered, "Oh my God!" Max grinned. Now they know. The chaos escalated. The second badger emerged and joined the fray, leaping onto another Skroth, biting through its armor as if testing the flavor. The third dug into the ground, disappeared, and reappeared behind the largest predator, climbing up its tail to latch onto its face. The creatures howled, swinging wildly. Within minutes, what was supposed to be a display of dominance turned into a desperate retreat. The Skroth fled into the jungle, pursued by 3 relentless earth creatures who neither hunted nor hated, only fought because that was their nature. Across the galaxy, laughter died mid-breath. The Confederation's broadcast cut between shocked commentators, silent generals, and horrified scientists trying to rationalize the footage. "They're not using strategy," one alien analyst whispered. "They're improvising." Another muttered, "No species survives this way. It's impossible." But there it was, 3 small mammals standing victorious on the battlefield, surrounded by broken predators 10 times their size. Max exhaled slowly, all replacing triumph. We might have overdone it. Aisha's eyes were fixed on the screen. You think? The control room was silent except for the crackling of the transmission. Then one technician whispered the words everyone was thinking. What if they don't stop? The honey badgers didn't. The last drone footage showed them wandering off into the alien wilderness, still fearless, still unstoppable. One of them dragged a Skroth corpse toward a cave as if claiming it for later. Another climbed a molten rock ridge and stared into the camera before walking away as if saying, "Next." Aisha leaned back, stunned. We wanted respect. Now we might have started an interstellar crisis. Max didn't respond. He watched the empty landscape, where 3 small shapes vanished into red fog. His voice was quiet but certain. We didn't start a crisis. We just reminded the galaxy that evolution has a sense of humor. In the far corners of the universe, messages spread. The laughter that once mocked Earth was gone, replaced by whispers and warnings. The predator planet had fallen silent. And in that silence, something far more dangerous than power began to grow: fear. The first sign that something was wrong came when the Galactic Confederation lost contact with Gralnak. For 3 days, there was only static, and then a transmission filled with screams before silence swallowed it. The Confederation assumed a natural disaster had occurred, perhaps volcanic activity or a magnetic storm. But when they sent a scouting vessel, it returned half-destroyed, its crew trembling, whispering about small black and white beasts that attacked like demons. The message reached Earth, and suddenly, the laughter that once echoed across the stars was gone. In its place came fear wrapped in confusion. Commander Aisha Patel stood in the conference chamber, surrounded by holographic projections of alien ambassadors, their colors dim with unease. The arbiter of beasts, the very creature who had mocked Earth's predators, hovered silently now. Aisha broke the tension. You wanted to see our apex species. You got your wish. The arbiter's glow flickered nervously. We expected demonstration, not devastation. Aisha's tone hardened. Nature doesn't take requests. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Dr. Max Rivera watched the transmissions in disbelief. The drone footage that had survived showed cities on Gralnak abandoned, the once mighty Skroth hiding in underground burrows, while 3 honey badgers roamed freely through their wastelands. One was filmed dragging a Skroth warlord by the tail, another had claimed a volcanic crater as its nest. Max leaned closer to the screen. They're not just surviving, he murmured. They're adapting. His assistant swallowed nervously. What do you mean adapting? Max enlarged the data feed. Temperature readings, oxygen intake, even their muscle density, it's increasing. The longer they stay there, the tougher they get. He straightened slowly, realization dawning. We may have just given evolution a head start. The galaxy began to fracture under paranoia. News networks across star systems debated whether Earth had unleashed a bioweapon. Some demanded Earth's expulsion from the Confederation. Others whispered that humanity had discovered a new form of biological warfare. But the truth was simpler and far stranger. Humanity had only introduced nature in its purest, most unfiltered form, and nature was now teaching the galaxy a lesson. Aisha's diplomatic channels flooded with accusations. One alien senator, a jelly-like being with flashing tendrils, hissed, "You have committed an act of ecological terrorism." Aisha replied calmly, "You insulted our world and its creations. We simply demonstrated balance." The senator shrieked, "Balance does not involve the extinction of an entire predator race." Aisha met its gaze. "Tell that to the honey badger. I doubt it will care." Back in his lab, Max replayed an intercepted recording from Gralnak's emergency beacon. The voice of a Skroth general, once proud and cold, was shaking with terror. "They don't sleep. They don't eat. They hunt for the sake of hunting. They are death without logic. Max paused the feed, his chest tightening with guilt and fascination. He had wanted to prove a point, not ignite chaos. But somewhere deep down, he couldn't help but marvel at the irony. The smallest, most underestimated creature on Earth had turned the galaxy's strongest world into a ruin. As days passed, the Confederation imposed a communication blackout around Gralnock. But information always leaks, and soon forbidden footage spread across underground networks. The video showed a honey badger climbing onto a crashed Skroth transport ship, its fur glistening with alien blood, before gnawing through a whole plate. The clip ended abruptly, followed by static and a faint growl. The galaxy had a new viral symbol, a small mammal with a glare that could silence empires. Panic rippled across planet. Merchants stopped trading with Earth. Civilian ships refused to approach human colonies. On some worlds, alien children played a new game called Badger Chase, where the goal was simply to run and hide. Yet amid the chaos, a few scientists admired the phenomenon. One reptilian biologist declared, "The honey badger is proof that willpower is a biological weapon." The statement was meant as analysis but quickly became a slogan whispered across the galaxy. On Earth, Aisha and Max were summoned before the United Planetary Council. The chamber was filled with tension. Every delegate stared at them as if they carried contagion. The chairperson, an elderly Martian hybrid, spoke first. "Dr. Rivera, Commander Patel, do you comprehend what you have unleashed?" Max answered honestly, "Not entirely. But we understand it can't be stopped." A murmur spread. "You admit this was intentional?" Aisha's voice cut through the noise. "It was justice." Outside, the media stormed the corridors, demanding answers. Earth's people were divided between pride and fear. Some called the honey badgers heroes, the ultimate comeback against alien arrogance. Others feared retaliation. Max ignored the politics, focusing instead on his data. The readings showed something extraordinary. The honey badgers were beginning to exhibit a new behavior: cooperation. They had started hunting in coordination, something never observed before on Earth. Max frowned. "They're learning teamwork." His assistant asked quietly, "From where?" Max stared at the screen. "From us." The Confederation decided on emergency measures. A retrieval mission would be organized to capture or eliminate the honey badgers before their influence spread. Aisha was ordered to assist as liaison, though she protested. "You're sending troops to fight something that doesn't fear death." The arbiter of beasts, dim and trembling, responded, "Better to die fighting than live in mockery of nature." As the preparations began, reports continued pouring in. Gralnock's ecosystem was collapsing. Predatory hierarchies had vanished, replaced by a new, chaotic order. Species that once ruled were now burrowing, hiding, or migrating into space. The planet's food chain had rewritten itself around 3 small mammals who hunted not for survival but for dominance. One Confederation general studied the data and muttered, "They're turning the planet into Earth." Max stood at the observatory window, staring at the holographic map of the galaxy. Red dots marked containment zones, but the cluster around Gralnock glowed brightest. "You know," he said softly, "every species on Earth had to fight to survive against impossible odds. Maybe we just reminded the galaxy what that feels like." Aisha joined him, her expression unreadable. "We've awakened something primal," she said. "And I don't know if the galaxy can go back to sleep." That night, the Confederation's top analysts gathered to discuss countermeasures. The meeting ended when one of their ships went dark mid-transmission. Surveillance footage showed a honey badger crawling through the air vents, claws sparking against metal, eyes glowing in zero gravity. The recording ended with static. The silence afterward felt heavier than fear itself. The retrieval mission was given a name that sounded like a bad joke: Operation Calm Snack. The Galactic Confederation insisted it was to de-escalate fear across the systems, but every soldier, scientist, and diplomat on board the command vessel knew the truth. It wasn't a mission of peace. It was a desperate attempt to stop something that had already rewritten the laws of survival. Commander Aisha Patel and Dr. Max Rivera stood side by side as the ship descended through the shimmering clouds of Gralnock, the planet that had once been a fortress of predators and was now eerily silent. The view through the viewport was unsettling. Forests half-burned, craters filled with bones, and structures torn apart as if by an army far larger than 3 small mammals. Max stared at the data feed. No signs of large-scale predators left. Oxygen levels stable. Radiation spikes here and there, nothing lethal. Aisha crossed her arms. Nothing lethal except what's waiting for us down there. The landing craft touched down with a metallic hiss. The retrieval team, a mix of human soldiers and alien specialists, moved cautiously onto the surface. The ground was marked by claw prints deep enough to break stone. One soldier bent down to scan a print. "Still warm," he said, voice shaking. They followed a trail through a ruined settlement where the Scroth had once lived. There were signs of struggle everywhere. Scorched armor, melted weapons, claw marks across walls. Aisha noticed one curious detail: food storage units left untouched. Max knelt beside a half-buried helmet, his tone grim. They didn't kill to eat. They killed to assert dominance. Aisha glanced around the lifeless ruins. Then this whole planet became a throne. After hours of searching, the team reached a canyon where the ground shimmered with heat. At the center stood a strange monument of bones and metal. Perched at the top was a honey badger, its fur darker than before, eyes gleaming like coals. Around it, 2 others prowled lazily, one gnawing on the remains of a Scroth weapon. Max whispered, "They've built territory markers." Aisha frowned. "You're telling me they're running a civilization now?" "More like an empire of indifference," he said. "They don't conquer for gain. They just refuse to yield." The first capture attempt began at dusk. A team of drone handlers released containment spheres filled with pheromone bait, hoping to lure the badgers into trap. At first, it seemed to work. The creatures sniffed the air, curious, then circled the bait. But within seconds, one leapt onto the drone, ripped open its casing, and flung the device into another, causing a fiery explosion. The badgers scattered momentarily before regrouping, as if insulted by the attempt. Aisha shouted over the comms, "Fall back, fall back!" The soldiers retreated behind energy shields as a blur of fury charged through the smoke. One of the badgers slammed into a trooper's leg armor, denting it inward before scurrying off. Another climbed onto a hovering skimmer, bit through the control cables, and rode it into a cliff. The explosion illuminated the canyon like daylight. When the dust settled, the honey badgers were gone. The team regrouped, shaken and bruised. Aisha turned to Max. "You said they'd be difficult, not impossible." He wiped dust from his visor. "Technically, I said unpredictable." She gave him a look that could have melted steel. "If we make it back alive, I'm rewriting your dictionary." Hours later, as the twin moons rose, the camp fell into uneasy silence. Some soldiers whispered that the badgers could smell fear. Others believed they could sense energy signatures. Max didn't dismiss any of it. He sat by the campfire, staring into the flames. "It's strange," he murmured. "Every species we've ever studied fights for survival. But these 3, there's something else. It's like they're proving a point." Aisha joined him, her expression thoughtful. "Maybe they're reflecting us," she said. "We sent them here out of pride. Now we're watching our own stubbornness infer." In the middle of the night, a low rumble echoed through the canyon. The ground trembled. The camp scrambled into alert mode. From the shadows, a massive Scroth appeared, battered but alive. Its scales were scorched and one eye glowed dimly. It limped toward them and dropped to its knees. Through the translator, its voice rasped. "You cannot capture them. They do not hunt for flesh. They hunt for respect." The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. Aisha approached cautiously. "You survived." The Scroth tilted its head. "No. I am left alive to witness." He told them how the honey badgers had destroyed the Skroth hierarchy in days, how the fiercest warriors had fled, and how the creatures didn't simply kill, they taught fear. When they arrive, the Skroth said, you stop being predator or prey. You just submit. His gaze drifted toward the horizon, where a faint roar echoed. They will come soon. They always return to see if we remember our place. The next morning, the Confederation fleet hovering above the planet sent a message to Aisha's team. Unauthorized footage from the operation had been leaked to the Galactic Network. The entire galaxy was watching again, but this time no one was laughing. Live feeds showed soldiers sweating, drones failing, and 3 creatures moving through smoke like phantoms. Commentators argued whether Earth had created the universe's first biological superweapon. Others whispered about divine punishment. The Confederation began mobilizing fleets toward Earth, terrified of what else humanity might unleash. Aisha's communicator buzzed. It was the Arbiter of Beasts, its glow faint and erratic. Commander Patel, it said, your species has become a threat to galactic stability. You are ordered to detain the creatures immediately or face sanction. She stared at the transmission, then turned it off. They mock us, then blame us when nature bites back. Max looked up from his datapad. They're not afraid of the badgers, Aisha. They're afraid of what the badgers represent. They're afraid of persistence. Before they could continue, a deafening roar split the air. The badgers had returned, dragging the carcass of a Skroth titan. They dropped it near the camp and stood still, as if offering tribute. Then one of them looked directly at Aisha. For a heartbeat, she felt something impossible, a flicker of awareness, almost telepathic, a primal understanding that crossed species and logic. Max saw it too. They're learning communication, he whispered. They're not evolving, they're accelerating. The standoff lasted minutes but felt eternal. Then, without warning, the badgers turned and bounded away, vanishing into the wasteland. The silence that followed was unbearable. Aisha exhaled shakily. They could have killed us. Max nodded. They didn't need to. They already won. When the mission finally withdrew, the once proud Skroth homeworld looked more like a cautionary tale. The Confederation issued emergency decrees, prohibiting biological experimentation. Earth was summoned to account for its actions. But no law, no fleet, no treaty could erase the truth that had already settled across the galaxy. There existed on one small blue world a creature that didn't care about rules, power, or fear. It only cared about surviving, no matter the odds. The Galactic Summit was supposed to be the event that restored order to the galaxy. Instead, it felt more like a courtroom for an entire species. The chamber hung above the gas giant Hovara, its glass walls revealing lightning storms that illuminated the delegates' uneasy faces. Aisha Patel stood at the center podium, her uniform crisp, her expression carved from iron. The representatives of over 100 worlds glared down from their platforms, shimmering in their alien hues. Above them floated the Arbiter of Beasts, its light now dim and flickering with nervous restraint. The accusations had been repeated endlessly over the last few hours. Earth had unleashed chaos, destabilized a predator world, and now posed an existential threat to galactic civilization. When Aisha finally spoke, her voice carried across the silence. You called us weak. You mocked our creatures, our evolution, our instincts. You wanted proof of strength. You got it. The crowd erupted into angry chatter, their translators struggling to keep up with overlapping voices. One delegate, a skeletal creature of glass and smoke, hissed, "You brought extinction to a Confederation world." Another, with crystalline wings, shouted, "Your planet breeds abominations." Aisha raised her hand. "No. We breed persistence." The noise fell back into uneasy silence. She continued, "The honey badger didn't destroy your empire. It revealed what your empires forgot. That survival isn't polite. It isn't diplomatic. It's raw." Meanwhile, Dr. Max Rivera sat behind her, monitoring live feeds from across the Confederation. Something wasn't right. Reports were flooding in from multiple sectors. Drones were vanishing near Gralnock. Navigation beacons had gone dark. Then came the first confirmed message. A cargo freighter had been hijacked. Its final log showed 3 small creatures on board, moving through the ventilation shaft. Max's face went pale. He whispered to Aisha's comlink, "They're not on Gralnock anymore." The summit dissolved into chaos as new transmissions filled the chamber. A panicked admiral appeared as a hologram. A transport ship left Gralnock orbit without authorization. Its crew is gone. It's heading toward the galactic core. The Arbiter's voice trembled. Impossible. They lack intelligence for interstellar travel. Max stood, speaking over the noise. They don't need intelligence. They need instinct. And they've been watching us. The feeds changed to live footage. The cargo ship drifted through hyperspace, its systems flickering. Inside, 3 honey badgers tore through wiring, apparently unaffected by lack of gravity. One floated by, calmly chewing on a fusion cable. Another clawed open a supply locker and nested inside it like it owned the place. The galaxy watched in collective disbelief as these small, feral creatures traveled where only machines dared to go. Within hours, the Confederation declared a state of emergency. Entire fleets were mobilized. Dozens of planets cut off all trade routes to Earth. Some even debated preemptive strikes. But Aisha refused to stand down. You think weapons will stop them? You can't intimidate something that doesn't recognize fear. The Arbiter turned toward her, light pulsing like a heartbeat. Then what do you suggest? Aisha looked at Max, who was already typing furiously. We lead them somewhere they can't win, he said. Or at least, somewhere they'll get distracted trying. Max proposed a desperate plan: lure the honey badgers to the Black Zoo, a containment station orbiting the edge of a singularity. It was home to the galaxy's most dangerous lifeforms: plasma eels, void scorpions, and the infamous gravity leviathans. The hope was that the badgers, drawn to challenge, would meet something even they couldn't overcome. Aisha raised an eyebrow when he explained. You're pitting chaos against chaos? Max gave a crooked smile. Exactly. The galaxy needs a reminder that balance exists, even in madness. The trap was set. Beacons transmitting synthetic pheromones mimicking alien prey were placed near the event horizon of the Black Zoo. The hijacked freighter followed the signal, drawn like instinct to challenge. Fleets surrounded the perimeter, weapons charged. The entire Confederation watched the live feed as the honey badgers disembarked. They floated through the void, clawing their way across zero gravity as if space itself were solid ground. One drifted toward the containment field of a gravity eel, a creature so dangerous it bent light around itself. The eel lunged. The badger met it head-on. The battle defied logic. The eel's gravitational maw twisted metal and light, but the honey badger clawed through its shimmering body, shredding mass that wasn't supposed to be touchable. Another badger ripped open the containment pod of a void scorpion. The resulting explosion sent shockwaves through the station, collapsing several decks. The observers gasped as the creatures fought with a frenzy beyond reason, destroying everything in their path but refusing to die. Aisha gripped the railing, her voice trembling between awe and terror. They're not fighting for food or territory anymore. Max nodded slowly. No. They're fighting for acknowledgement. The feed shook violently as the Black Zoo's containment field destabilized. Warnings blared through the control stations. The Arbiter shouted, "Shut it down before the singularity ruptures." But it was too late. The badgers had reached the core chamber, surrounded by black hole energy. For a moment, everything went white. Then silence. The feed cut. The entire summit held its breath. Slowly, the static cleared, revealing the impossible. The honey badgers were still alive, clinging to the shattered remains of the containment structure. One of them looked directly into the drone camera, eyes reflecting the burning light of the singularity behind it. It opened its mouth, and let out a low growl that vibrated through every transmission channel. Across 1,000 worlds, beings who had never felt fear before suddenly understood it. When the feed ended, no one spoke. The Arbiter finally broke the silence. Earth's creatures have defied physics. What are they? Aisha looked out at the galaxy's rulers and said quietly, "They're reminders. Nature's way of laughing back." In the days that followed, the Confederation rescinded its sanctions against Earth. No one dared challenge a planet that could breed such defiance. The fleets were recalled, and the official statement declared the honey badgers contained, though everyone knew that was a lie meant for comfort. In private, leaders whispered that the creatures still roamed near the singularity, unbound by laws of nature. Max spent long nights reviewing data from the encounter. He found traces of something extraordinary, minute fluctuations in quantum communication frequencies that seemed to align with the badger's movements. It was as if they were resonating with the black hole itself, adapting once again. Aisha found him staring at the data one night and said softly, "You think they'll come back?" Max didn't look up. "They never left. They're just deciding when to remind us." And across the galaxy, where once there had been mockery and arrogance, there was now a strange, reverent silence. No one laughed at Earth anymore. In fact, most avoided mentioning it at all. The predators of the stars had learned a truth they would never forget: there are worse things than death, and one of them wears a black and white coat and doesn't care who's watching. The galaxy eventually learned to live with fear. Centuries passed, but no one forgot the day 3 honey badgers rewrote the hierarchy of nature. Gralnak became a forbidden world, marked by silent warning buoys that glowed crimson in the void. Ships that drifted too close never returned. Pilots swore they heard growls over the comms before the signal cut out. The official explanation was radiation interference, but everyone knew better. There were still creatures down there who didn't care about physics, reason, or empires. They cared only about the eternal principle of defiance. Commander Aisha Patel had retired long ago, but the legend followed her like a shadow. Statues were built on Earth and beyond, depictions of her facing the arbiter of beasts, speaking for a world once ridiculed. Children studied the honey badger incident as both a cautionary tale and a symbol of human persistence. Earth, once dismissed as a primitive backwater, now held a seat of honor in the Confederation. No one laughed when humans spoke anymore. They listened carefully and they weighed every word. Dr. Max Rivera never retired. He couldn't. The mystery consumed him. He spent decades decoding the data left behind from the Black Zoo event. The readings never made sense, defying every known equation. The honey badgers had not only survived the gravitational energy, but had somehow synchronized with it. The data pulses weren't random, they formed repeating sequences, patterns that resembled communication. Not human, not alien, something else entirely. A new intelligence born from defiance itself. Max knew what it meant, though he never said it aloud. The honey badgers had changed. When the transmission came, it was faint but unmistakable. A repeating signal that originated near the same singularity where they had last been seen. It wasn't words but rhythmic bursts, almost like a heartbeat. Then came something no instrument could explain, a whisper. Not audible, not electronic, but felt deep in the human mind. The words were simple, almost primitive. "We see you." Max sat alone in his lab when he experienced it. For a long moment, he simply stared into the holographic display, realizing that the creature's humanity had once sent as a joke had evolved beyond biological limit. They weren't animals anymore. They were something older, purer, and infinitely more patient. The message spread across the Confederation before any authority could contain it. At first, the governments called it a hoax. Then more scientists reported hearing it. Pilots traveling through the outer systems claimed to see flashes of movement outside their ships, shapes small but swift, impossible to track. The Confederation panicked quietly. Some worlds fortified themselves. Others prayed. Earth, however, remained calm. Humanity had learned to coexist with the absurd. They knew that trying to control chaos only made it stronger. Aisha was an old woman when Max visited her for the last time. She lived in a small home by the sea, far from the politics of the stars. He found her watching the waves, a faint smile on her weathered face. "You've heard it too, haven't you?" she asked without turning. Max nodded. "Everyone has, eventually." She exhaled slowly. "Do you think they're coming back?" Max looked toward the horizon. "No. I think they never left. They're watching. Waiting for the next species that forgets to be humble." Aisha chuckled softly. "That sounds like us." He smiled. "Exactly." When she passed away months later, the Confederation declared a day of remembrance, not just for Aisha, but for what she represented, the stubborn will of a species that refused to bow. At the ceremony, the Arbiter of Beasts, now old and dimmed, spoke through trembling light. "Once we mocked Earth for its weakness. Today we honor it for its truth. Strength is not born from dominance. It is born from the refusal to yield." The words echoed through the chamber, and for the first time in galactic history, every delegate stood in silence rather than applause. But peace never lasts. Years later, deep space sensors detected a new anomaly. A small asteroid field near the galactic rim showed signs of terraformation. What was odd was that no colony ship had been authorized in that sector. When an automated probe was sent to investigate, it transmitted strange visuals before its systems failed. The last image showed tunnels carved through stone, vegetation transplanted from Gralnock, and at the center, 3 shapes moving in the shadows. The creatures had built a home, or perhaps a kingdom. The probe's data log recorded one final sound before transmission ended. A growl, faint but unmistakably confident. The discovery reignited old fears, but this time, no one proposed war. The Confederation established an exclusion zone around the asteroid, officially naming it Sanctuary Zero. Unofficially, it was known as the Badger Preserve. Pilgrims from across the galaxy came to orbit nearby, leaving offerings, carvings, and tribute. Some saw the honey badgers as gods of resilience. Others saw them as omens of nature's revenge. But everyone agreed on one thing: they were the ultimate proof that evolution didn't need logic to be powerful. Max continued his research until the end of his life, seeking to understand how something so small could defy everything. On his final night, he recorded a message for the next generation. "We built machines to protect us, and they failed. We built weapons to control others, and they turned on us. But nature built something that ignored fear, pain, and pride. Maybe that's what survival truly is, the courage to keep fighting even when the universe laughs." When his body was found, the recording had already uploaded itself to the Confederation's archives. No one ever found who authorized the transfer. Centuries later, the story of Earth's honey badgers became legend, told across countless worlds in whispers and awe. Historians debated whether they still existed, or whether they had merged into the fabric of the cosmos itself. Children learned the tale not as a warning, but as inspiration. The moral was always the same: never underestimate what refuses to quit. Then, one quiet cycle, a deep space observatory on the far side of the galaxy captured a transmission unlike any before. It wasn't coded or artificial. It was a low-frequency resonance, rhythmic and alive. As technicians amplified the signal, it became clear it was coming from multiple points across the galaxy. Synchronized, precise, intentional. And within that pattern, hidden in the static, was a single phrase in perfect translation: "We are still here." Across the galaxy, silence fell. Fleets paused, wars ceased, and for one brief moment, every species remembered the small creatures that had once taught them fear. On Earth, the oceans shimmered under starlight, and in the wild places where no human dared to tame, distant eyes blinked in the dark. Somewhere out there, beyond the edge of understanding, the honey badgers continued their eternal conquest of existence, calm, fearless, unstoppable. And as the stars burned quietly above, the universe itself seemed to accept the truth that even in the face of infinite power, sometimes the smallest thing in creation could make everything else remember its place.